it's time to look at Clemson, the ACC, and their 2025 football schedule.
Yeah, so combing through everybody in the country, basically. It was just supposed to be the Big 12, and now here we've carried it over into pretty much everybody. So Clemson today, as we go alphabetically through the Atlantic Coast Conference, and we'll see, 5 years from now if we're still talking ACC schedules with Clemson. But for now, it's the status quo, and so let's get into the Tigers, who had a pretty good 2024, I'd say. Got into the college football playoff, won the ACC, went 10-4 overall, and then ultimately got cut short against Texas in the second round of the college football playoff. But not bad for a program who a lot of people were predicting was on this downslide, and the coach had lost his touch and was out of touch more than anything else. Paul, do you feel as strongly about that as you did maybe this time a year ago?
No, I think he's adapted fairly well. I'm not sure if he just finally had to cave. Like, I'm curious as to what made the decision for him, and to go and get these people. And I support him not going whole hog on it, but the fact that you have a couple of things and you're like, no, I'm so good at coaching true freshmen that this will work out. No. I mean, the best teams are the ones who use everything at their disposal. And he was a bit like the Cowboys of the transfer portal where, no, not doing it. Nobody who doesn't commit to Clemson first off is good, and I can't have him. And now he's gone out and gotten some good players. So I think he's, whether he wanted to or not, finally adapted.
Yes, I think going 10-4 and getting into the playoffs and, being able to hoist the ACC trophy is a successful season. So I think Clemson very much with the statement last year that they are still a force to be reckoned with. But obviously the big picture is larger than just making the playoffs. So how will that work for them this season? Well, it's going to be a fun journey that features a 10 power conference opponent slate. By the way, Clemson on a streak of 14 straight years of 9-win seasons. If you think about that, like a lot of 8-5s for people, or 7-6s, or at least some kind of blemish, but they've won 9 games, bare minimum, for 14 consecutive years. So that's a pretty incredible mark there. I don't know how long Ohio State's streak might be or somebody along those lines, but pretty cool there. That they've got that going, and just shows you what a good job Dabo's been doing. So can they make it 15 straight? They will open up the season and start things off on that campaign in their attempt to do so with a pretty massive non-conference game on Saturday, August the 30th, as they will take on the LSU Tigers in what should be a hell of a matchup there early on in the season. And that's a game that will be the first meeting between these two teams since they played in the national championship game a few years back. They have not played a ton in the course of their history, Clemson and LSU. It's just been a handful of times. LSU does have the overall 3-1 record, with the most recent meeting coming in 2020 down in New Orleans, as Joe Burrow and that LSU team was pretty special stuff there. But LSU just right out of the gates, that's a pretty fun opener, LSU and Clemson in week 0 there.
Yeah, 3-1 all time, LSU over Clemson. I think they should put some stakes on this, that since it's a regular season game, the winner gets to call their stadium Death Valley.
Yeah.
Until the return trip.
Yeah.
And
It's
the
just
other
the Death
can't.
Valley Bowl or something.
Yeah, the Death Valley Bowl, yeah. So it's at what Garrett will call you the fake Death Valley, and not the real Death Valley.
Sure.
Speaking of Garrett, we give a little note. When he gets back next week, he's been traveling the country, going to some famous stadiums throughout.
Yeah.
We have pictures. We'll do that next week.
Yeah, but this should be a great one. These are two teams loaded for bear. Both have their quarterbacks coming back. Both have stacked rosters, good recruiting classes, and all that.
That's far.
So much forgiveness. Wait, did you say forgiveness like far? Or forgiveness like forgiveness? Forgiveness. Forgiveness. Forgiveness.
I'm hearing far.
Forgiveness. Like forgiveness. Forgiveness? Forgiveness.
I'm still hearing far, but whatever.
Introducing Stealth 2 with more carbon for more forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Just hit it.
Saturday, August 30th has some good games. This might be my the most anticipated one for me to watch would be Clemson and LSU. I mean, I hope they keep playing games like this every year. LSU not afraid to do this. Clemson not afraid to do this. Clemson played Georgia 2 years in a row. LSU, I mean, they just keep doing it. It's great. So yeah, rack it up, keep going. I'm excited about that.
And this isn't in Las Vegas or in Hollywood or something like that. This is in Clemson, South Carolina. So that's a cool part of that as well. So yeah, Clemson, LSU to start the season off with. Then it is back at home, first 2 weeks at home, as on September the 6th, they will face off with Troy. So looking at 1-1 or 2-0 there, most likely. I think that LSU game's a bit of a toss-up at the moment. But then after Troy, and what is likely your first or second win, then you will travel to Georgia Tech to open ACC play in week 3 there, Saturday, September the 13th will be the date of that game in Atlanta. So this is a game that follows the first time that they had not played each other since 1982 because of the growth of the conferences. So they're getting back to it, and Georgia Tech will open up conference play. I'll stop once I get to a bye week, which is after this following game. September the 20th, 4 games in a row. This one also ACC contest. It'll be Syracuse there in Clemson, South Carolina. So first 3 games are at home, but first 3 games also feature LSU, Georgia Tech, LSU at Georgia Tech, and then Syracuse, who was a pretty good story a year ago. So first visit for Fran Brown as leader of the Orangemen to go down to Clemson, South Carolina.
And that's a pretty good schedule.
It is.
I hope that we don't get away, and I don't think we will because the Michigans, Ohio State last year had a little bit of a week, but Texas and the Oklahoma, they're playing good people. They're going to play good people. So I hope we don't get away from these great non-conference games. Georgia Tech, I love their coach, Brent Key. That's a tough game. That's on the road. That is a little dicey. Clemson, of course, good. But that's good that they're going to reconnect again in week number 3.
And look, looking at, they've got, it's a tough schedule, but they get all the tough games or the rivalry games except for 1 at home. Or 2, I guess, at the end of the year with South Carolina. We'll talk about that. But this first little pod here, 3-1, they're fine. 2-2, then Dabo's got to talk, he's going to have to be well, no, we're not going to get more transfers, or no, he's going to be, what's his name? Tucker from Spartanburg or whatever his name was is gonna be calling up again. But if they're 3-1 and their losses to LSU, I don't think anybody's going to care. But Georgia Tech and Syracuse are teams that can put a charge in you for sure. And that could be interesting. Georgia Tech in Atlanta would scare me if I'm anybody. They look like they're on a rise right now, and Haynes King is back, and he's just a gamer, man.
He needs to be healthy, though. That's the thing. I want to see him actually be able to throw the football with regularity and not have to basically be a glorified running back half the time, which he was, especially there late in the year. But, yeah, he's a good player, and Georgia Tech ought to be pretty good. So they will finally get a break, after that first 4-game stretch. And then return on October the 4th, taking on Bill Belichick and the North Carolina Tar Heels in Chapel Hill. So you have a couple weeks to prepare for that game, and then it'll be Dabo versus Belichick, just like we all predicted years ago that we would get a matchup like that. So that'll be interesting from just a kind of PR standpoint. Then the following week, they are on the road again at Boston College. Chestnut Hill taking on the Eagles on Saturday, October the 11th. They've won 12 straight against Boston College, and they're 5-0 in the last 5 trips to Chestnut Hill. So Bill O'Brien versus Dabo Swinney here. So back-to-back games against former NFL head coaches turned ACC head coaches. Then October the 18th, it'll be SMU in a rematch of last year's ACC championship game. First time they'd ever played each other. And, of course, Clemson with the big walk-off as they won the game and got into the playoff. Of course, SMU lost the game and got into the playoff, but now a rematch between those two in a thriller last year, and then their second bye week. So that stretch of of at North Carolina, at Boston College, and then SMU before they get another break. But some pretty interesting coaching matchups and an interesting rematch from a year ago.
Am I allowed to bring up? No, I'll wait. I'll wait and look at the overall ACC schedule they have. That's Bill Belichick. They get a bye week, so at least they'll know and have something on film of North Carolina when they get to that point of their schedule.
So 4 a break, 3 a break, and then a final 5-game stretch to close the season, all in the month of November. They will play host to Duke. Then it is hosting Florida State, and I should make mention about Clemson. All the way up to this point, it's been all Saturday games, but that does change. After Duke and then Florida State, both of those games at home, it is back on the road to take on the Louisville Cardinals, and that will be a Friday night game. So even Clemson has to play a Friday night game, and it will be against Louisville on November the 14th. So that's the only non-Saturday game of the schedule. They come back the following week, and they have this non-conference matchup with Furman. That is very SEC of them to have that game so late in the schedule.
Dress for the job you want, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, yep, that's basically just getting your schedule ready for perhaps the future. But they will take on Furman on November the 22nd at home, of course. And then it is the finale on the road at South Carolina, another non-con game. So they actually close ACC play on November 14th. And then they close the year with 2 non-ACC games because it's Furman, and then it is a trip to Williams-Brice Stadium to face off with their hated rivals, the South Carolina Gamecocks, there in Columbia. And obviously that's a pretty heated rivalry. And so they're looking to make it 6 straight in Columbia against South Carolina. So that's a pretty good little streak there to go on the road and beat your rival that many times in a row. So, yeah, there you go. That's how it will close out on November the 29th with South Carolina. So in terms of the teams they do not play, I mentioned Florida State, so this is already wrong, but they don't play Miami. They don't play NC State. They don't play Wake Forest. And off the top of my head, I don't know who else would be a big matchup maybe that they're not playing.
They don't play Pitt.
Okay, yeah, Pitt. But they get everybody else, right? They get pretty much everybody else. That's the who's who of the ACC. So, there you go. There's Clemson's schedule. Pretty even in terms of 4-5-4. So you're not having these kind of crazy, like 2 games and then your first bye week or something like that. Sexy non-con, man. LSU and South Carolina. That's pretty cool. Georgia Tech will be a fun road trip to Atlanta. Chapel Hill would be a fun road trip to see them play. Belichick go up to Boston. I go out to Louisville. Like, I think it's a pretty fun schedule, a pretty competitive schedule. And that's what Dabo and company have in front of them with Cade Klubnik obviously being the big face of the franchise that's returning at quarterback.
And of course, SMU coming off what they did. And then if we could ever get the Seminoles
we'll see.
Straightened out.
I do think this, though. If you look, they've got 3 home games in a row, SMU, then a bye, Duke, and Florida State. Those are 3 tough games, though. SMU is going to be really good. Duke has been good consistently, and they just brought in Darian Mensah. And then you've got a rivalry game. And look, now I don't know. I have no idea what Florida State's going to be. I think they're going to be better, but that's not hard to do. If they're 3-9, guess what? They were better. But that's still a rivalry game, and you never know what's going to happen to those things. They've dominated the series as of late, only losing 1 of the last 8 or so. And so, but it's still a tough stretch, and it's a tough schedule. And, they appear loaded for it, but, man, you don't get they don't have a break of like a couple weeks where they can be banged up or injured and like go through and not have to worry about somebody jumping up and biting them, really, because this is a tough one. Now, they do get, Syracuse at home, LSU at home, SMU, Duke, and FSU at home. But at Louisville, they lost to Louisville last year at home. Now they're going on the road on a Friday night. That's kind of a nasty thing there. And then out South Carolina, even though they got that streak on, South Carolina is expected to be better than they've been in a very long time.
Well, you open and close with 2 teams that absolutely will be ranked high. Absolutely. South Carolina may be ranked preseason poll higher than they've been in forever. And I don't know if I don't know if they're a top 10 ranked team, but with Sellers and all that coming back, that's going to be, and then they just need Florida State to be good. You're looking at a schedule that you could lose a couple of those and still be very much in play in the college football playoff because of who you're going to play.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough schedule. I mean, they do miss Miami, so there is one, I guess, check for them in terms of it not being as brutal as it could possibly be, or as tough as it could possibly be on paper. But beyond that, they pretty much have lined up as the best I can tell, one of the better schedules, tougher schedules on paper that they've had in quite some time. So, yeah, there's the Clemson schedule. Fun bookmarks. LSU to open the season ought to be a hell of a game. And then they and South Carolina both could very well be in CFP contention the final week of the season. But a lot can happen in between, obviously. But, yeah, looking forward to seeing how Cade Klubnik follows up what was a pretty sensational year last year and definitely answered a lot of questions from doubters. So excited to see how he can build off that. And, yeah, there you go. There's Clemson's schedule.
They're not going to have to travel to the West Coast, are they?